That's Nick.
And that's Joseph. And today we're here to talk about King Richard, the third film directed by Reinaldo Marcus Green, which Warner Brothers is releasing November 19th, 2021. It premiered at the Telluride Film Festival and then went to BFI and will be showing in Los Angeles at the AFI Film Festival about a week or so before it opens.
What has this director done?
Monsters and Men and Joe Bell, aka
Good
Joe Bell.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we reviewed that.
Yeah.
And it was a 2018 Blacklist script by Zach Baylin, which would be his debut. He's gone on to apparently write the script for Creed 3.
Nice. The basic story revolves around Richard Williams, who's played by Will Smith. Mm-hmm. Richard Williams is the father of Venus and Serena Williams, who we all know. And the story, we catch them when they're children. Like Venus is like 11, she's the older sister. And the process of them becoming the tennis greats they are up to Venus's first like real match.
In 1994, yeah.
So it's them much younger. We don't see them as adults and with their huge star power. But the focus is really on sort of the unconventional way their parents guided them, and that really revolves around the dad taking care to like preserve their childhood. So like he noticed that other like juniors playing tennis trying to go pro would be like ultimately become burned out, or like we see some using drugs. So he was very concerned about his children and he wanted them to have a real childhood. So he just fought for them to get really great coaches and for them to train to become the best, but they weren't going to play matches until they were ready. Mm-hmm. And then we finally see Venus play a match against some top-rated player. She ultimately loses that match because the other player pulls some bullshit. The end. But of course we know how the story really ends.
Yes.
I did not watch this movie. I was not feeling well yesterday. It was yesterday or the day before?
It was yesterday.
And yeah. I need to get my rest. But you described it to me.
Yeah.
And I thought it sounded heartwarming. I did watch the trailer before you saw it. Mm-hmm. And I was a little concerned about Will Smith's performance because he has like an affected pattern of speech. So go ahead.
He does, and I think I feel much like he did the accent in Concussion. It's once you kind of get going, you warm up to it, and I think the performance overcomes those kind of stylizations. But yeah, actually, I thought he gave a really warm, poignant performance. I think that it is interesting in several ways because it's not quite the biopic you might expect, and I think that the title is kind of misleading because this really is about both parents, and yes, what he did for his daughters is the reason they were able to become what they became, but also their mother, Brandy Williams, played by Aunjanue Ellis, who I think who Ellis is a underrated character actress. She's great. I mean, I've liked her since A Map of the World opposite Sigourney Weaver, but she is an absolute scene stealer in If Beale Street Could Talk. She's in Lovecraft Country. I think she's on par with Will Smith and deserves, I'm sure he'll get an Oscar nod for this, but I think she needs to be in the conversation as well. But I think based on how this is written, it really is about the family unit more than anything else. And it's not quite warts and all. There are allusions to some of Richard's behavior, like stepping outside of the marriage and having other children, and how Brandy always kind of stayed by his side. And then as it basically starts in 1991 and ends in 1994, so a period of 3 years. But towards the end of that, we finally are getting tidbits because I was aware of the Williams sisters in the late 90s because of everybody talking about how their hair, because all those white people were upset about beads. But I didn't realize that he was such an infamous figure on the sports circuit, if you will, because of lots of things he would say, like tennis parents should, I'm paraphrasing, but something about tennis parents dying and blah, blah, blah. And how he was also viewed as kind of a huckster, as they refer to him in some sound bites here. So really the pressure that was on these girls to succeed, well, specifically Venus to succeed in the doors that she opened, including for her own sister, Serena, who they do take pains to show that, was kind of shoved into the shadow of her sister. Because it opened with him giving these coaches pamphlets that he's designed showing videos of his daughters, one played by Kevin Dunn. Everybody's like, you can't afford to have the proper equipment and training for these girls. But he somehow finagles his way into Paul Cohen's court, played by Tony Goldwyn, and he agrees to teach one but not both for free. So it ends up being Venus, who is slightly older, and that's right before she's about to be signed onto a coach played by Dylan McDermott. That's when Richard decides, like, all these girls I see are burning out, I need to take better care of my daughters. And then he finagles something with Rich Macy in Florida, played by John Bernthal, who moves them to Florida, and the rest of it kind of moves from there. I found the score kind of overly manipulative, and I think that it does cut some corners, but I don't know, if you like seeing black people succeed, I think there's really a lot of poignant, inspiring sequences in here, and it feels like there's a lot more to say about the Williams sisters that I'd be curious to know based on what they allow to be kind of depicted about themselves maybe later on. But really it's about the family, it's not just about him.
So Richard Williams is no Joe Jackson.
No, this is like if Joe Jackson were a caring, heartfelt parent, at least portrayed here. But again, we were talking about that. You can't really you couldn't do a Joe Jackson biopic without talking about his wife and his children. And that's very much what this feels like. So you get a lot of Venus and Serena, and Venus is played by Saniyya Sidney, who I thought was also quite good. I think who plays her in both periods, and Demi Singleton as Serena. I also like their older sister played by Tunde, whose name was Tunde. There's some conflict in the beginning because he's taking them. They live in Compton, and he's taking them to a local tennis court, and Tunde is being harassed by these young men that are, being sexually suggestive. And that scenario ends with him he gets beat down in front of his kids, and he is on his way, as depicted here, to shoot one of them when they're gunned down in a drive-by. To me, it's a film about parental anxieties, if you will, like doing the right thing for your kids, keeping their best interests in mind, if you will. So in that sense, it's doing a lot. And again, I think there's an argument to say that it's a very square film, because I heard people griping after the screening, but to me, there's a lot that was very touching about it.
What would you give it?
Oh, and you know what else was interesting? Because I really know nothing about tennis, so I wanted to go look up in 1994, where she did her first match, the Bank of the West Classic in Oakland, which happened on October 31st, 1994. Tomorrow's Halloween. So she wins the first round of that to a woman named Sean Stroud, who's number 59. And I wanted to look up the French lady, the number 1 slot, who she plays next in the match, who she loses to. But as depicted in this film, I know I keep saying that, this French lady does something called icing her out. She's losing to this 14-year-old, and you can see, and I mean, I guess you can understand, losing to this 14-year-old, at the time, novice. This woman pulls a stunt where she goes to the bathroom for 10 minutes, and there aren't any rules saying that she has to come out. So, Venus kind of loses her resolve, and she ends up faltering as the match goes on, and that woman wins. But in the film, it's a French lady, but in reality, it was a Spanish lady named Arantxa Sanchez. So I don't know. I found that, I don't know why they had to make that change, but...
Oh, interesting. You found that interesting.
It was lensed by Robert Elswit, who's an Oscar winner for There Will Be Blood. Chris Bowers was the composer, and there's nothing innately wrong with the score. I think just how it's edited, and then in there to be, significantly manipulative in all the obvious ways. He also did the score recently for Respect and Space Jam. I don't know. I think this will have a wide appeal, but I don't know. If anybody's going to be hard on Will Smith, I don't think they should be. I think he does a fine, touching job.
What would you give it?
I would give it 3 out of 5.
Anything else?
No.
Bye.
Bye.